You're listening to the Millionacres Podcast. Our mission at Millionacres is to educate and empower investors to make great decisions and achieve real estate investing success. We provide regular content and perspective for everyone, from those just starting out to seasoned pros with decades of experience. At Millionacres, we work every day to help you demystify real estate investing and build real wealth.
Hello, I'm Deidre Woolard, an editor at Millionacres, and thank you so much for tuning into the Millionacres Podcast. Right now, we're at an interesting point in time with regard to the union of public and private capital to fix some of the bigger problems we see as a country. That includes affordable housing. My guest today is Jim White. Dr. Jim White has had a fascinating career in business and real estate. He's the author of multiple books, including Broken America, 10 Guiding Principles to Restore America, and Opportunity Investing, How to Revitalize Urban and Rural Communities with Opportunity Funds. He's an advocate for using business techniques to make the world a better place. Welcome, Jim.
My pleasure. Glad to be with you today, Deidre.
So I read a couple of your books, and you've got these strong opinions on the role of government in building a better nation, which I really love. I don't want to get too much into politics because that's not what we do at The Fool, but what do you see as the government's role when it comes to issues like housing and economic development?
Government's role when it comes to housing and economic development is to support when necessary, try to remove as many regulations, and oftentimes when I will start out with that word regulations, I get a lot of inquiry afterwards. What do you mean by that, Jim? Do you mean that we suggest that we have no regulation, we run free, we do whatever we want? That's not what I'm suggesting whatsoever. What I'm suggesting and what I've seen over my 40-year career, you may have a project that is ready to go. You may have all of your financing put together. You may have everything. Then you run into this red tape and what I call that will just derail a project. So I think the government's role is safety, health and welfare first and foremost, and to make sure that they're understanding that the private sector can be more involved and create more jobs sometimes than just government grants or different initiatives. So I think it requires coordination between the private sector and the government at all levels, meaning from the smallest rural community, the Chamber of Commerce, for everybody to understand it, and what we should and should not be doing. And a lot of our projects get delayed because of lack of decisions, lack of the ability to understand complexity. And what I try to do is to take very complex subjects, especially say planning commissions, not suggesting that they're not intelligent or qualified, just to the contrary. They're very intelligent and qualified. However, we oftentimes run into people's job for over 20 or 25 years, and they don't have an incentive to make things move fast as we'd like to do it. So I think the government's role is be open, include us in the discussion, have our local representative do more what I call town hall meetings, if you will. And of course, that's been a challenge in 2020. But they got to listen to the private sector. And we've got to have some very good economic advisors. If the government puts out a dollar, which we pay for, you and I pay for, all of us and listeners pay for, we need to understand the return on that investment and to make sure that there is accountability to the investment. That's another thing that I think is sometimes we can go, I've seen it go too far. No accountability and too much accountability. So how do we find a road? And so I think especially this juncture, it's in May of 2021. We're coming off just a heck of a year. We got. I'm an I think our better days is ahead of us, and but we got to make sure that we are allocating money. If we go in debt, the United States continue to go in debt. We need to make sure that we're putting that money in place.
Well, that's a really good point about debt, because one of the biggest conversations lately is about infrastructure bills and the massive amount of infrastructure that's really needed. It's very clear that our infrastructure is aging, but there is that big risk of going into debt. It seems like there's some benefit for real estate developers and investors in plans like this, though. What are you looking at right now?
There's a huge opportunity for developers and investors in the infrastructure side, and I'm going, excuse me, I'm going to define infrastructure. I'm talking about broadband. I'm talking about roads, bridges, dams, highways, and there's more to it than that. But I'm going to stay focused on that right now. There are opportunities. Some major architectural firms, engineering firms, contracting firms, they're more than open to come to the table with the government and the public-private partnerships. So there's money. There's a lot of money from the private sector that's open to that. However, again, we run into the conflict of regulation, where a lot of my colleagues over the years that they get turned off because we just want to do a deal. So how do we move this forward? And you run into so many roadblocks, and so that keeps coming up and up and up. And like I said, I am an optimist, and I'm clearly talking to city councils, planning commission. I don't care any opportunity to educate. And if I could educate and break it down into nuts and bolts, this is how many dollars you can get into your city. This is how many jobs that we can create. And don't just like to be sound bites, but hold people accountable to measure you're actually doing what you're saying. So I have a tremendous opportunity right now, because there's over $7 trillion sitting on the sidelines account now that can be play, and that's from the private sector. And with the bills that we have in front of us, combined with that, I think it's a tremendous opportunity. It is a defining time in our industry, and the development industry, and also in America, where we can start rebuilding. And it wouldn't hurt to have some civility as well, and communicate a little bit better with each other. And when you go into negotiation with an open mind, not just my way. That's what negotiation is all about, is to make sure that we find a balance for both sides, and that seems to be missing, in my opinion, of recent, not only in government, also sometimes in the private sector as well. So I think there's a tremendous role for the private sector to work with the U.S. government and the local governments as well. There's going to be, in the next few days, there's going to be $350 billion that's going to hit the state treasuries. So what are they going to do with that money? How's that money earmarked? And that's just that's not coming from the infrastructure bill that's currently in negotiation. There's over 250 billion, excuse me, I misspoke, 250 billion, I believe the accurate number is, that's going to hit states, because there's so many states that have stated from the COVID-19 issue, and how they're going to use that money. And I often find that there's not been much planning on receiving that money, how to put it out. So I just think we're sitting in a golden opportunity to open up the country and actually put people back to work. And you see my eyes jot around when I use that word, because I don't want it to be sound bites. I really want it to be, are we actually doing that? And we do to motivate the employees? What do we do to motivate them where they can say that we want more? Well, what's that mean? I start off in any opportunity I get when I'm speaking to any of my employees, the quality of life. And I said, why do you show up to work every day? Well, to make money. I said, well, I suggest you wordsmith that a little bit. Looking at it to create a quality of life for you and your family that you like to have. So what are you doing about that? So create long-term value. And right now, in the current environment in our industry, we're having difficulty finding a staff that actually wants to work. And so that's another barrier. The infrastructure development bill or anything else, it's finding the staff to be able to fill these jobs.
That is a really good point. One of the things that I've talked about with other people too is the aging of the average construction worker. That was a factor long before COVID. It's, now that we're getting back to building, we're coming up against that again. It really is a problem that, how do we get people excited about the trades? There really seems to be a problem there. There's a little bit of a gap between what people see as the opportunities in the trades, and so that's something I'm looking at too.
Yeah, there is, Deidre.
I wanted to talk to you a little bit about cold storage because that's something I think is really fascinating. I noticed you're the CEO of Growers Ice Company, which is a development in Salinas, California. Can you tell me a little bit more about what that opportunity is?
Sure. Growers Ice started in 1936. We're one of the oldest what we refer to in fresh produce. What we do is fresh produce post-harvest. When harvest is completed, you bring it to a site, and it goes through step one. It's called simply meaning removing the heat from the vegetables as fast as you can to maintain shelf life and create the quality of the product. Then it goes into a cold storage facility where it's handled until it's shipped out to different distribution centers throughout the United States. So Growers Ice Company, we own 28 acres, just under 300,000 square feet of existing conditions. It's old. The average cold storage facility in the United States is 42 years old. There's been no major upgrades or innovation in the fresh produce pre-cooling cold storage area. And it's really important to separate that asset class because a lot of people get confused about cold storage as far as bioscience or for frozen. That's an entirely different asset class. From the fresh produce side, there's been no major innovation. So what we're doing, we started this initiative about years ago, was to upgrade the campus, as we refer to it. And so it's been a 4-year planning process. It's be over a $200 million project. And we are moving ahead with that. We're very excited about moving ahead with that development. And what we want to do is to add technology. That's used a lot, but what's it mean? From energy, especially in California. Energy is a big issue in California. The energy cost continues to accelerate. The local utility, there's no secret over the years that the challenges they had from the wildfires and all of these different things in California. So the cost of energy is just skyrocketing. Last year, we saw about a 22% increase kilowatt hour. Then it gets down to peak hours when you use that energy. And we're all about energy. The pre-cooling and the cold storage is energy. So we've been spending a lot of time, how do we develop a system with a microgrid system utilizing solar, utilizing the generation, utilizing batteries, and being able to become as self-sufficient as we possibly can. So that's a big part of the development that we have. And then the other part of that is the automation, what we refer to inside the warehouse, because again, workers, as you stated about the construction workers that works in these cold storage facilities, it's a tough job, and we're always looking for ways to excite them, and it becomes hard if you show up every day and working in 8-9 hours in a temperature-controlled warehouse, even though you have the outfits and the cold storage gears required to work in it, it's still, you're working inside, you're working this place. So what we wanted to do, and we're looking at, is to how do we can automate a lot of these processes. And when I use that word, a lot of our union friends, which we have 2 or 3 on our campus, they get a little concerned, but so you're trying to displace workers, right? No, just contrary. We're trying to give workers a different skill so they can increase their hourly wage, not just stay at this minimum wage, if you will. So we're doing that on the campus. And we are scheduled to come online our doors, and right now we're pushing March of 2024 to have that in a whole new facility. Be 400,000 square feet. A lot of this, we're going to have over 750,000 square feet of solar panels. We're going to have a new office building, 32,000 square foot office facility, which will accommodate the sales groups for these different campuses. And it's the first and it's the largest facility of its nature that's been built 30 years more. So very excited about that project. And it also has a lot of infrastructure components as well. The roads, obviously the traffic's being impacted, bringing the trucks in and trucks out, the wastewater, the environmental issues, especially on the Central Coast of California. There's a lot of environmental challenges there that you've got to take in consideration. New pumping stations, if you will, for industrial waste. And again, the cooling aspect for these coolers, we currently use ammonia. And ammonia is the most efficient, arguably, of the refrigerants to be used. So we're looking at how can we use another, because ammonia it can be dangerous if not used correctly, right? So we're looking at different ways to improve that and to upgrade our technology cooling equipment as well. That's another initiative we have. And we also own a company that we engineer and manufacture our own pre-cooling equipment as well. So we're doing a lot of upgrades in that area as well. We're very excited about that project, and this one, and do the next one, and do the next one, and this one. That's what we want to do. We want to be known as the people that actually put money out and to do what we could to bring new facilities online for the next 50 to 60 years. So that's our project in Salinas.
Well, that's really interesting because I feel like with industrial, you're part of a larger trend, which is the difference between taking industrial was traditionally just like a big warehouse. There's not, that much in it. It's just a big building. Now we're seeing robotics. We're seeing, machine learning, food handling that's getting more delicate, all different types of ways of tracking food to know where it comes from. That whole farm to table movement is working through produce as well. So what other features are you looking at in terms of putting this building online? You mentioned the shift in freezing. What other technology are you looking at?
You just hit on a big one, Deidre. Food safety. Some of this technology now, I think it's applied as broadly as it should be applied. I think it's important that the growers, shippers, the farmers, and then from the post-harvest technology side, such as the supply chain that we're in, that we do everything we possibly can to make sure every product that leaves is safe for the consumers, and to make sure that we monitor that, making sure that we can, if something goes wrong, we can immediately say, this leaf came from this location at this time to this. So getting that level of technology to be able to isolate, should there be an issue, and to be able to isolate down to the row and the tree that came out. So we're looking at that as well. Like I said, there's a lot of that currently today, as you well know, but I think we can do a better job with that. Then the other aspect is what I call food security, which is a little different than food safety. Food security, how good of a job are we doing to make sure that our water sources are secure? In this day and age, we cannot take anything for granted. Unfortunately, we're living in a time that there's a lot of bad actors in some way. I can't think of another word. That we got to take our security aspect more serious as well. And so we're looking at that. How do we make sure when a product that would come to our campus that it's secure once it's there? Not from the sake that we're secure. Nobody can get access to it. Nobody could do anything malice intent to any of our food chain within our control. Add in a lot of security elements as well to the campus.
Interesting. You mentioned water. I used to live in California, and so I've got this sense of water and water rights. Can you explain a little bit, like, just how important is securing water for the future to your business in Salinas and to other businesses in the area?
I think water is the number one because in California and Salinas area, the Monterey area, we do have saltwater intrusion coming into our aquifers, and to being able to control that. Without water, our community does not exist. And Salinas Valley is often referred to as the salad bowl of the world. There's a 9-month period of time during harvest, which starts around March and concludes around November. That's almost a $5 billion market of produce that's flying through that market with a 100-mile radius. So livelihood is that. So we have no industry. So water is a big big deal. So there's a lot of initiatives have been involved from working together with a lot of colleges and nonprofits and for-profits as to how we attack this proper allocation of water. That's another thing. And we talked earlier about what government can do. Part of that is making sure that there's an allocation process, that the water rights are being allocated equally. Sometimes you got some small people that may not have the access to maybe the large, right? So that's something that you got to look at as well. And but the simple answer is no water, no industry. That's it. It's just that serious.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I noticed also that part of this is logistics. Certainly the last year taught us about the supply chain and how very important that is. What factors are you looking at in terms of getting the produce out of your facility? Are you looking at autonomous trucks and things like that?
We are. We are looking at that. Autonomous trucks, I think we got some ways to go on that element. The other thing that we're looking at first and foremost is the EVs, electric vehicles. So we're looking at that. So anything that we can do to reduce that per mile charge, getting the produce to market, then again, having vehicles that are traveling the highways that are safe, getting vehicles that are traveling that are not beating up the highways for infrastructure, being able to utilize rail more, which is a challenge within itself, especially coming out of our market, being able to use air transport more, so all of those things in the logistics side are extremely important. And I'm not suggesting that the industry is not taking it serious. We are, but it's not moving fast enough, in my opinion, because one of the initiatives that we have in our U campus is, actually, this net carbon zero by 2050. And so coming off there. So that's one of our initiatives that we have built into this project. And I know other firms are taking on the same thing. It just, it excites me to see the firms looking at sustainability, impact investing, and those two words for themselves. That's very exciting, especially when you get private sector. This is important to our globe. It's important to our communities. It's important to our state, our nation, and we're pushing those initiatives on a daily basis. So we're not looking at a problem. without these components associated with, and specifically without the ability to measure these components as well. I've used that word measure 2 or 3 times since we've been chatting. It's really important to me. Measure what you're doing, and to be able to have a conversation with anybody who wants to have the conversation. Are you actually creating quality jobs? Answer should be no, not a maybe, or we give a spin to it. It has to be measured. Are you, if you're utilizing a government program, are you in fact using that the way it's intended to be used in the community? Again, accountability and transparency. I think across the nation we got a long way to go, but I'll never stop singing that song, if you will. That we got to get there. I think we got to do a better job in that transparency and accountability.
Love it. All right, that's a great place to take a quick break.
Like what you're hearing? Get more real estate investing news and advice from Millionacres on Instagram at Millionacres and on Twitter at Millionacres_co.
Christina Real Estate Investors provides an unparalleled opportunity for investors nationwide to participate in curated real estate portfolios in the West Side region of Los Angeles. For more than 40 years, Christina has generated exceptional returns for its investors through a unique strategy and structure focused on tax-advantaged wealth preservation and long-term capital appreciation. By investing with Christina, you'll own a direct stake in exceptional properties located in ultra-prime submarkets of Los Angeles. Managed by a highly skilled team with a proven track record, Christina underscores its philosophy by co-investing in every offering. Coming soon, Lawrence Taylor, founder and president of Christina, will speak about the firm's current portfolio offering and ways to invest. For more information, please visit ChristinaLA.com.
All right, I am back with Dr. Jim White, and we're talking about all sorts of things. We're talking about agriculture, we're talking about industrial real estate, and now I want to talk about opportunity zones because you've written a book about them. One of the things I really liked in your book was you talked about developing playbooks for investing in certain areas, and I like that idea of creating ways to kind of streamline, build plans, and use that to revitalize communities. Can you explain a little bit more about what you were thinking about that?
Yes. When I first started writing that particular sector, I said, again, it goes to a lot of the conversation we're having other than about regulation. And streamlining and getting businesses in alignment with nonprofits as well. Being able to go in these, there's over 87, almost 8,800 of these qualified opportunity zones in the United States. Currently, most of the investments are going in multifamily housing, which is need. I'm an advocate for we can invest in parks, we can invest in boys and girls clubs. We can, for example, just one nonprofit, there's many of them, the Wise, and just go on and on and on. At the same time, have this conversation with your local officials, the mayors, the supervisors, if you will. I'm speaking California language, and say, this is what we're doing. How do we streamline to get from point A to point B? How can we make this process? Because I'd really like to see this park to be open as soon as we can. I'd really like to see this program to be enacted as soon as we can. So that was my thought process when I was talking about streamlining. But you've got to have the ability to communicate the message, because these community leaders, they hear so much from so many, right? Who do you believe? Who do you not believe? How do you sort what's real and what's not real, if you will? So that's what I meant with that, is streamlining and get our colleagues in business to be able to say, let's allocate from our own resources. Let's put some money aside to actually go make something happen and show the community that we're serious about it, versus, because there's so many times when a developer will come into a community and they will talk that for 15 years, right, before it ever becomes to reality. So that's the thing that I wanted to point out is we had to streamline the process, not only from a government regulation, but from the decision-making process, and get your nonprofits and your community involved in the process. That's going to help streamline.
I also noticed in the book you mentioned historically Black universities and colleges that are in opportunity zones and what that represents for people to create other projects around those important institutions. Why is that something that you wanted to highlight?
I wanted to highlight and say it takes everyone, and that's my belief. And sometimes I think the diversification is not what it should be. I think given resources around those communities within the QOZs, specifically I was advocating more incubators, if you will, is get people job creation. And as I look around, there's not that many around those issues as compared to, say, some of the other universities are around us. So I just wanted to highlight, just call it out to say, yeah, there's an opportunity, and especially when you have over 35 million Americans that reside in these 8,800 communities. And the number of Black, white, brown, Asian, it's all in there. So we should not just be thinking that that we're leaving those folks behind. But again, you've got to get those. You got to help yourself as well. You've got to get involved and want to do more. So I just wanted to highlight to say, just don't overlook it. Just don't overlook it. There's opportunity here. Putting some money in there and see what we can do to help jumpstart some excitement. And I often say hope is not a strategy, but hope as to give people encouragement that maybe they're in a situation that you can get out of it. You can do better.
There's so much criticism about opportunity zones, though, because a lot of it has said that developers are coming in from outside. They're focusing more on the ones in the city as they're just trying to build developments and make money. Are you seeing that as the program matures, is there more opportunity that people are looking at rural opportunity zones? Are developers being more sensitive about that and not just coming in and trying to make money right off the bat?
What a great question. And I think we could do better. We are a developer. We are one of them. I take the long view. It's creating value is long term. I think initially the program has been misunderstood, and number one, not having the accountability or being the numbers to really zero in, as I stated earlier, about are these dollars being used exactly where they should be. Best account I have, there have been $10 billion invested since the inception of the program, and the majority of that's been in multi and urban communities. Well, what I say in my book, you got the rural too, right? You got the rural, and that's what we're looking at, the broadband, and we're encouraging, and that's what we're doing. Salinas is not urban. We're out. I mean, it's a city, but what we're doing there, we fit in that. We're out in the farm world, and so. And I encourage people to go look and workforce, as we talked about earlier, is a challenge in the United States, and we're finding some great attitudes of wanting to work in some of the most rural communities, and happens to be in an opportunity zone. So. Are we doing as much as we need it? No, we're not, Deidre. I just call it. I think we can do better. Industry to be able to look at these rural opportunities.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your project because it is in an opportunity zone. I know you've got several opportunity zone funds set up around different aspects of your business. Why did you decide to break it up in that way?
I decided to break it up that way because the investors that would be interested in the opportunity zones look to from a tax standpoint, right? And this discussion, I could open up a can of worms, but I'll just go there. Is if I got capital gains, I believe that if you could reinvest those capital gains, and this is where the government comes in, and if we can have that analysis, if I give a developer or someone that's got capital gains a break on their taxes, provided that they are creating jobs, I'm all for that. So I wanted to break it into these different components because different investors have different appetites for want to invest their money. So we got the real estate side, we got the pre-cooling fund, we got the alternative energy fund, we got the automation fund, we got the logistic. So each one of those has a investor appetite versus just taking one that fits and try to fit that. So I want to get very specific. When I'm talking to an investor, your money's going to go here. This is what we're going to do with it. This is how we're going to measure it. Here's some of we're not being your attorney, we're being your tax advisor, we're not being your CPA, but our analysis suggests that the government would allow you to take this investment tax credit, take this depreciation, and get this benefit by making this investment. So I just wanted to give also investors of all size an opportunity to invest versus just taking, oh, geez, your minimum investment is $500 million, right, or $500,000, like that. I wanted to have different funds that, okay, maybe there's $1,000, but or $2,000 or $5,000. We can set up different funds that will accommodate that to help other people get invested in some of these funds as well. The reason we did it, and it's an administrative challenge, I can tell you that, for us, keep all those compliance issues, because now I got 5 different funds that we're having to have all the compliance issues with. So, and just before I had the pleasure to start our talk today, I was talking to some of my controller, my CPA, and their word is always, geez, Jim, you got another compliance issue for us, right? And I said, yes, we do, but it's another opportunity we have to put the money out where it should go. So.
Interesting. I think one of the things you talked earlier about solar panels and things like that, I've noticed the opportunity zones. So the rules require that you have to improve the property, but there aren't any green or sustainable rules around that. Do you think that that's something that should change?
I do. I absolutely do. I absolutely do. Think it should change. And where I think it should change in the conversation I have with my colleagues in the industry, it's not require the government to give us a rules to change it. It's the right thing to do, and it makes sense for us to do it, so let's do it. So I'll continue that dialogue as well. And I'm finding that a lot of our colleagues believe the same way that I do. But I do think there need to be some additional rules for sustainability and energy associated with this. I absolutely do.
Yeah, I feel like they've until you put it into the rules, people don't necessarily want to play along.
Yeah, that's true. I like to pride myself on being the exception, and we try to be that exception. For example, during COVID, March, before the first CARES relief, one thing that I in our little war room, I got my team together and I said, what can we do if are afflicted by this thing? So we were the first ones in the nation that actually came up with this 80-week we'll give you 2 weeks of pay, no questions asked. And then after the first CARES Act came out, that became part of the rules. So I only bring that up to say, this is what we try to do. We try to be more proactive, and versus somebody saying, "Rule, you got to do it." But you need both, right? You need both. And I absolutely agree with you. A lot of people, I'm not going to do anything because my responsibility is to your shareholder, and that's right. My responsibility as a CEO and a chairman is to my stakeholders. Absolutely. My stakeholders is the community. My stakeholders is the state in which I operate, and my stakeholders is the nation in which I have the privilege to operate as well. So you got to be able to you're balancing all of those, and it's not an easy task to do that. But imagination, it's not. And it puts challenges on staff to be able to do that. But that's the way I think. And I think if we can do more of that, we're going to make more progress.
That's fantastic. During your lifetime, obviously, real estate development has changed in so many ways, but in some ways, even in my lifetime, it really hasn't changed. What do you think needs to be improved in the way that we develop properties?
What a great question. First thing that comes to mind is making sure the developer has a clear, what I call project charter, clears of what we want to do, and then for them to have better communication and go to the community straight out and tell them the story. Become a good storyteller, putting pictures, and to make sure that people really understand what we're trying to accomplish. Because you said it earlier about some of the negatives of the QOZ program, where a lot of come into the urban and you take the money and you run it, and there's people that's done that. And we got to be more transparent that we're here for the long term, not just come in, strip all the money out of it, and move to the next place. We get calls all the time to look at projects around the nation and around the world, and I'm very clear to staff. Don't go outside of what we're good at. Don't get in things that we don't know what we're doing. It's going to go to some place that we don't understand. We don't understand the rules and regulations. Stay in the wheelhouse and just do what we do extremely well. So I think having a clear charter, making sure that you got good relationships and with your banking community, with your investment community, with your politicians, and with person with sidewalk and every opportunity I get. Oh, do you know what we're doing here at 1124 Abbott Street? We're building this like that. Do you know anybody that's looking for a job or you want to have another career? So it's those type of things that I think that needs to change, other than the fact that we're always in modeling, which is important. You got to be able to model your projects. There's no tax incentive in the world that has any value, in my opinion, unless the project stands on its own to begin with. That's the first criteria. Don't bring me this incentive if this project is destined for failure, where it's just going to allow you to take off the top and go away, right? So that's, to me, is not the way to do things. So again, transparency, making sure that we're doing the health and safety of the communities, to streamline the process. One of our contractors earlier today about one of our extensions to the project we're working on in Linus on the campus. He said, "How long is it going to take to get this thing permitted?" And I said, "Probably 6 to 10 months." He said, "Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. That's going to miss the window of the time that we need to be open," because I said, "That's right." So this is the type of thing you need to do early on, is to make sure that you go in, and that requires everybody in the chain to be executing at the top of their game all the time, and that's a challenge.
That is a challenge. One last question for you. What advice would you give to aspiring investors who want to make money, but they also want to do good in the world? You're doing both right now, but is it possible for someone who's starting out to do both at the same time?
It is today. It's absolutely possible today. There's so many initiatives and ESGs, impact investing, different funds that are actually just focusing on that. So yes, on our website, we got different tools there where if you're interested in that, you can go look and search and trying to make things available so you can find those resources and to be able to do that. Absolutely, you can, and it's more today than it was 18 months ago. Amazing. Seen a lot of this develop even in 2020 during COVID. The emphasis on sustainability and impact investment and social issues. My investment team are talking to investors every day, and it's one of the first. What are you doing in impact investing? How do we know that if we invest in your fund, that it's going to be used the way you thought? What measures do you have? What transparency do you have? So, straight answer to your question: certainly do it. really important that you can, and there's a lot of funds available to do that.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you so much for your time. Reminder to listeners, you can always learn more at authorjimwhite.com. You can always email us at media@millionacres to share your thoughts, or call our voice line at 844-615-2201 to be part of the show. Stay well and stay invested.
Thank you for tuning in to the Millionacres Podcast. I hope you liked today's show. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing through your favorite podcast provider. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop us a line at help@millionacres.com. Stay well and stay invested. People on this program may have an interest in the deals, offerings, or services they discussed at Millionacres, or the Motley Fool may have a formal recommendation for or against. Always consult a certified tax professional before acting on tax advice, and do not buy or sell assets based solely on what you hear.